Have you ever been in a connection that felt real, deep, and full of potential, only to have the other person suddenly disappear without explanation? One day they're all in, the next they're gone. No closure, no warning, just silence. And you're left staring at your phone, wondering what you did wrong. If this sounds painfully familiar, you're not alone. And you're not crazy. I'm Jim Rohn, and in this video, we're going to unravel one of the most confusing and emotionally destabilizing experiences in modern dating: being ghosted by someone with an avoidant attachment style. But more than that, we're going to look beneath the surface and ask the question most people never think to ask. What are they really running from? Because here's the truth most people miss. Ghosting isn't just about losing interest. It's often about fear. A very specific, very intense fear that avoidants carry deep inside. And once you understand what that fear is, you stop taking their disappearance so personally. You stop chasing closure from someone who's not even clear with themselves. In this video, I'll help you spot the avoidant's deepest emotional trigger, the one that gets activated right before they pull away. And we'll also look at what your reaction reveals about your own attachment style. So if you're ready to stop obsessing over mixed signals and start understanding the real emotional patterns underneath ghosting, make sure you stick around until the end. Don't forget to subscribe. We unpack the psychology of modern relationships every week so you can move forward with confidence, not confusion. Now let's get into it. Most people assume that a dismissive or fearful avoidant's deepest fear is losing their independence. And while that fear is definitely present, it only scratches the surface of a much more layered internal experience. The truth is, what avoidants fear most isn't just entrapment, it's what intimacy activates inside of them. You see, when a fearful avoidant begins to emotionally connect with someone, it doesn't just feel exciting, it stirs something older and much harder to sit with. Those unresolved fears buried deep in the background of their nervous system. Fears like, if I let someone close, I'll lose myself. Or, if I try to love, I'll mess it up. Or the most haunting one of all, I'm not safe when I'm seen. These beliefs aren't always conscious. In fact, they're rarely verbalized, but they are powerful, and they drive much of the hot and cold behavior that follows. As the connection grows and the emotional stakes rise, their internal discomfort starts to build. It can be so subtle that they don't recognize it themselves. What started as attraction now feels like vulnerability, and what felt thrilling now feels risky. And without even understanding why, they begin to retreat, not because you did something wrong, but because closeness has begun to poke at wounds they never learned how to name. Think of it like a silent countdown happening beneath the surface. Every deeper conversation, every emotional moment, every step toward real intimacy adds pressure. And when it reaches a point that feels unbearable, ghosting becomes their nervous system's escape hatch. To them, disappearing isn't cruelty, it's relief. It's the only way they know how to stop the internal panic from spilling out. But to you, the person left behind, it feels like betrayal, confusion, and abandonment. And that's the heartbreak of being attached to someone who hasn't yet made peace with their own inner world. Until they can sit with those fears and learn to regulate instead of run, they will keep resetting the system by walking away the moment it feels too real. Let's look at things through a slightly different lens for a moment. There's a pattern I often refer to, something I call the avoidant death wheel. It's not scientific, but it's strikingly accurate when you're trying to make sense of why someone pulls you in, vanishes, then circles back like nothing ever happened. And oddly enough, it fits beautifully with the metaphor of the hourglass we discussed earlier. Picture this: there are 8 emotional stages the avoidant tends to cycle through. It begins innocently enough. I just want someone to love me. There's a longing for connection, for closeness, for something that feels safe and mutual. That's stage 1. It's here they flip the hourglass, unconsciously setting an emotional countdown in motion. As they move into stage 2, I've found someone. And then stage 3, things are finally looking up. The illusion of safety grows stronger, but beneath the surface, the grains of fear and vulnerability are quietly collecting. By the time they hit stage 4, I'm starting to notice things that worry me. Those grains have piled up fast. Their body feels tense. Their thoughts get cloudy. An intimacy which once felt comforting starts to feel like danger. They don't usually say this out loud. They just start detaching. Then comes stage 5. I need to get out. That's the emotional tipping point. The pressure is too much. They flip the hourglass again, not to buy time, but to relieve the internal panic. Ghosting, withdrawing, or suddenly ending the relationship becomes their escape hatch. It feels like betrayal to you, but to them it's survival. And while you're left confused, hurt, and searching for closure, they move into stage 6, what I call the honeymoon of avoidance. There's temporary relief, even joy. The fear has been reset, but that lightness never lasts. Stage 7 creeps in. I'm feeling off. The loneliness begins to settle. They've distanced themselves from the connection, but the ache of emptiness returns. And by stage 8, why can't I ever find the right person? They're back in longing again, feeling lost, confused, and ready to begin the cycle all over, often with someone new, or sometimes circling back to you. The saddest part? The hourglass never leaves their hand. Every time they meet someone new, they flip it, unaware that the real issue isn't the person in front of them, but the unresolved fear they carry inside. Until they turn inward and face that fear with honesty and support, the cycle doesn't stop. It just resets. Just 5 days ago, Sarah married her former partner. On the surface, that sounds like a happy ending. And it is. But what makes it powerful is the road that led her there. Months ago, she and her partner were completely disconnected. The relationship had crumbled under the weight of fear, miscommunication, and emotional shutdown. There was no fairy tale then, just heartbreak. But something shifted. Early in February, they found their way back to each other, not through a dramatic reunion, but through honest conversations, mutual accountability, and yes, professional help. They committed to therapy. They started doing the deeper emotional work, not just as individuals, but as a team. In April, they moved in together. In May, she got the ring. And somewhere along the way, they adopted a puppy and began to dream about stuff. But what Sarah wants you to know is this: healing wasn't instant. And it definitely wasn't easy. In her words, there were nights I felt invisible, days I wondered if I was crazy for holding on, moments I screamed into silence, hoping they'd hear me. If you've ever loved someone who withdraws when emotions get real, you know those dark places. You know the ache of being emotionally present while the other person disappears. Friends tell you to walk away. Family members don't get why you still care. And yet, your intuition whispers, there's something deeper here. That's not delusion. That's a longing to be met. Sarah's turning point wasn't luck. It was support. She stopped chasing and started focusing on emotional clarity. She stopped begging to be chosen and chose herself first. She got guidance. She learned the difference between loving someone and losing herself in the process. And from that place, the dynamic shifted, not through pressure, but through presence. So here's the takeaway. If you're in the middle of your own version of that dark place, know that it doesn't have to stay that way. You don't have to fix the relationship overnight. But you can start by anchoring back into yourself, by setting boundaries with love, by learning how to regulate your emotions without abandoning your truth. Because real healing doesn't mean chasing people back. It means becoming someone who doesn't chase at all. because you finally believe you're worthy of being chosen without asking. Now that we've unpacked the hourglass metaphor, the way avoidants quietly count down to emotional retreat, there's a natural question that comes up next. Can you stop it? Can you keep the hourglass? It's a fair can choose how we show up once we realize we're in a relationship with someone avoidantly attached. From my perspective, once you become aware of that dynamic, you're standing at a fork in the road, and there are three very different paths you can take. The first one is what I call the anxious loop, and it's the one most people fall into by default. This is the road many of my clients arrive on when they first come into coaching. It's driven by fear, fueled by hope, and rooted in a powerful but painful belief: if I just try harder, they'll finally stay. The anxious partner senses the avoidant pulling away. Maybe it's subtle at first: fewer texts, less warmth, more avoidance of anything emotionally meaningful. The anxious brain goes into overdrive. You start analyzing every word, replaying conversations, crafting the perfect message. You tell yourself that if you just say the right thing, prove how loyal and loving you are, they'll snap out of it. So you reach out. You over-explain. You walk on eggshells. You soften your boundaries. You try to be easy. You try to be safe. But here's the harsh truth. All that effort has the opposite effect. It doesn't slow the hourglass down, it speeds it up. Why? Because to the avoidant, your increased pursuit activates their deepest fear: being consumed. So instead of drawing them closer, your anxious energy confirms what they were already afraid of: that intimacy means overwhelm. And before you know it, they ghost you. Again, and the worst part, you blame yourself. You start thinking, maybe I was too much. Maybe I scared them off. Maybe I need to fix something about me. But here's the piece no one tells you. It's not just the heartbreak that hurts. It's the cycle. Because if that avoidance circles back, and they often do, you'll take them back. Why? Because nothing was resolved. No boundaries were strengthened. No patterns were named. And so the loop resets. You keep hoping they'll choose you, but in doing so, you keep abandoning yourself. That's the first path. Familiar, painful, and deeply disempowering. But the good news? There's another way. The second path, and in many ways the most transformative, is something I call a secure pattern interrupt. If that's a new term for you, let me show you what it means with a different kind of picture. Imagine you're sitting in your car at a stoplight. You've driven this road so many times you know exactly what's coming next. Green means go, red means wait. It's all routine, predictable. But this time the light turns green and nobody moves. The car in front of you just sits there. No honking, no explanation, just stillness. For a second, your brain stalls. You expected motion. Now, something unexpected has broken the flow. That moment of disorientation, that pause in a script you thought you knew, is what we call a pattern interrupt. Now bring that same idea into a relationship dynamic with someone who has an avoidant attachment style. Avoidants are often caught in deeply familiar patterns, especially when they're entangled with someone who leans anxious. It's not that they consciously look for anxious partners, but their nervous system recognizes the pattern. Anxious energy tends to reach, "Why haven't I heard from you? Are we okay? And we talk?" These questions, often genuine and heartfelt, come across to the avoidant like cars honking at a green light. It creates internal pressure. It stirs their fear of being engulfed, of losing autonomy, of being responsible for someone else's emotional state. They know this rhythm. You reach out, they pull away, you pursue, they shut down, and the cycle plays out again and again. But here's the real shift. What happens if you don't press the gas this time? What if when the green light comes, you don't move? What if you don't send the follow-up message? Don't reach out again. Don't try to fix their silence with more noise of your own. That stillness, that pause, that quiet refusal to play your usual role, that is the secure pattern interrupt. You don't abandon the connection, you just stop over-functioning inside of it. You step out of the emotional choreography and create space. And the beauty is, that space doesn't threaten them. It doesn't feel like control. It feels like peace. For many avoidants who are used to emotional pressure and intensity, that calm, steady energy feels unfamiliar and powerful. It doesn't mean they'll come back. But if they do, it won't be because you chased them. It'll be because you changed the rhythm, and for the first time, they noticed. So what does all of this actually feel like from the avoidant side? To answer that, we don't have to speculate, because many avoidantly attached individuals have shared their experiences publicly. In one online thread, avoidants were asked a simple but powerful question. How do you feel when your partner gives you space? And the responses were surprisingly honest. One person wrote, "Relieved. I block them for as long as possible, but once I realize they're not chasing me, I come back feeling clearer, more connected, even grateful." Another avoidant, a 35-year-old man, explained, "I feel good at first, like I can finally breathe. And when I've had enough space, I come back with more to give, like I've actually been seen." These responses point to something important that often gets missed in anxious avoidant dynamics. For avoidants, space doesn't mean disinterest, it means regulation. When they're overwhelmed, closeness can feel suffocating, but when given room to reset, without pressure, they can reconnect more freely. The challenge, though, is that this goes against every instinct in someone with an anxious attachment style. To give space when all you want is reassurance requires trust. And in most cases, there's no guarantee they'll return. That's why for many people, especially those tired of living in emotional limbo, there's a third path. One that doesn't rely on managing the avoidance response or waiting on their return. It's what I call the Hourglass Breaker. This is the path of full reclamation, where instead of reacting, chasing, or even waiting in quiet hope, you choose something radically different. You flip the focus inward, cut the emotional cord, and start building a life where emotional safety doesn't depend on someone else's capacity to give it. It's bold, it's scary, but it's also the most freeing option of all. If path 1 is about surrendering to your anxiety and path 2 is about responding with grounded emotional boundaries, then path 3 is something entirely different. It's not a strategy, it's not a trick to win someone back, it's a full energetic exit from the game itself. I often call this path the Hourglass Breaker. The moment you stop trying to manage another person's emotional patterns and start choosing yourself without apology. This path asks more from you. It asks for honesty. It asks for strength. And it asks you to release not just the person, but the illusion attached to them. The hope that if you just get it right, say the perfect thing, regulate your emotions flawlessly, give them all the space they need, they'll come back different. But the truth is, no amount of careful walking on eggshells has ever made someone stay if they were determined to leave. And no amount of patience will heal someone who refuses to face their own emotional patterns. What actually draws an avoidant back when it happens isn't pressure, it's absence. It's the unexpected silence that interrupts their cycle. Because here's something you may not have realized. Many avoidants don't reflect deeply on their relationship until after you're gone. While you're anxiously analyzing, they're avoiding. While you're poring over every word, they're numbing out. But when you stop showing up in the way they expect, no texts, no emotional reach-outs, no quiet waiting in the background, the emotional static that once overwhelmed them begins to clear. And sometimes, that's when they feel your absence the most, not because you chased, but because you didn't. Still, the irony of this path is that by the time they circle back, you've changed. You're not stuck in the loop anymore. You're not waiting. You're not needing closure because you've already given it to yourself. You've realized that this person never held the key to your peace. You did. and you begin to question something you never allowed yourself to ask before. Do I even want them back? Or do I just want relief from the wound they triggered in me? This is the power shift that changes everything. The hourglass loses its grip because you're no longer standing beneath it, waiting for the fall. You've stepped off the treadmill, stopped rehearsing your worthiness, and started reclaiming the time and energy you gave away in hopes of being chosen. Here's what that looks like in real life. You stop obsessing over what they're thinking. You stop trying to send a message through silence. Your no contact isn't a manipulation, it's maintenance. You fill the space they left not with more longing, but with your own healing. You begin journaling not about them, but about you. You start asking what you need in a relationship, not just what you're willing to tolerate to keep someone near. You pour into friendships, hobbies, purpose, and peace. You begin living like someone who doesn't need a particular person to feel whole, because now you're learning to belong to yourself. That's what breaks the hourglass. Not the cold shoulder, not ghosting them back, not playing hard to get, but a genuine return to your center. A decision to stop orbiting around someone else's avoidance and instead build a life that feels safe, warm, and fulfilling, with or without them. And yes, it's hard, especially if your attachment wounds have taught you that love means working for approval, proving your worth, or staying in discomfort long enough to be seen. But here's what's even harder. Repeating the same painful cycle and calling it connection. At some point, you have to decide that your peace is more important than their potential, that your healing is more important than their confusion, that your emotional clarity is worth more than one more round of mixed signals, half love, and silence. Because when you get to that place, when you truly walk the third path, you stop needing them to come back. And that, paradoxically, is the moment they often do. But by then, you're grounded enough to ask the most important question of all. Do they still fit the version of me I'm becoming? And if the answer is no, you'll let them go again. This time, with love, this time without pain, because this time you choose you. And that's a story worth living.